Hey Toronto, what's up? It's your man Pete, and in this video today I'm going to break down to you how the Toronto real estate market has performed over the last 3 months, which are basically the core months of the pandemic. We're going to go through sort of the months of April, May, and June, and we're going to see what's really happened here in the market. And I mean, some of you may be shocked, some of you may be surprised. I'm not particularly surprised myself because we're almost back to normal in terms of the sales numbers, and obviously the demand is as high as can be. So we'll go into a little bit of the numbers and we'll break down the analysis and we'll give my opinion on what I think has happened over the last 3 months and what we might continue to see over the next second half of the year. It's going to get really interesting here for real estate, and hopefully this video will give you some insight and some better decision making abilities. And of course, if you ever want to work with us, then please feel free to give us a shout here at Selling Toronto. We are happy to help you out. So the Toronto Real Estate Board released their numbers for the month of June, which was numbers that I was really highly anxious to see because, we were starting to trend up based on the figures that we saw in April. The numbers obviously tanked. Now, that doesn't mean that the prices came down. It just meant that there were no deals getting done because clearly people were nervous to sell their homes. That's when, fear was at its height. And we saw that in the stock markets as well, where it just completely sort of dropped. In April, we did less than 3,000 sales transactions. Prices pretty much stayed level in the month of April, around $820,000 between 2020 and 2019. And then in May, we saw a slight uptick. So we called that signs of life in the market. We did around 4,600 transactions and sales. And then in May, we actually saw a slight increase in average prices, going to around 860,000 versus 830,000 last year. But then when the June numbers came out, they were absolutely insane. We almost doubled the amount of sales from May to June of this year, and we were only about 100 transactions shy of June of last year. So we did about 8,700 sales this year, and we did like 8,800 sales last June in 2019. But really what was more interesting was seeing the price increase in average prices. So last year in the month of June, the average selling price was around $830,000. In June of this year, it went up to $930,000. So it went up a whole 100,000. So that tells me that even though we did the same amount of transactions this year as we did last year, people were willing to pay more. Obviously we know bidding activity is still the norm here, and it's probably even picked up in intensity from what we're seeing with some of our clients. And so people are willing to pay more because there's less out there, there's less inventory, there's less houses to choose from, and people just want to try to just get in and buy a house, and they don't want to get into a bidding war, they don't want to fight with people anymore. So what I'm saying is that the market has actually picked up in intensity. So people are more active, people are scrambling and fighting for fewer properties because clearly there are less properties for sale. We did see a big increase from the months of May and April, certainly. Like we almost pretty much doubled the amount of sales transactions, and this is what we call pent-up demand. So there was people who wanted to buy in maybe March, April, or May, if it was a normal market. After we started to get a better understanding of what this pandemic and what the virus was about, people felt a little bit more comfortable. The real estate industry, we adapted to it, and we got to think about just how important having a good home and shelter is here in the city or virtually anywhere in the world these days. So then now, if we sort of look at the overall numbers, how far are we behind last year's numbers? At the same half-year mark in 2019, we did about 43,000 transactions, which was sort of a slower year. We've had much stronger years in the past, but then because of this whole lockdown scenario with the pandemic, we only did about 36,000 transactions so far, which to be honest isn't really that bad. It's almost like we only lost 1 month, and sales have been roaring back and prices have been skyrocketing for the month of June. So the question naturally becomes, are we going to be able to catch up to last year's sales numbers and figures? Likely not, unless we get a vaccine and as things somehow get back to normal in the third or fourth quarter of this year. But I think everyone's expecting a bit of a slower recovery. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw some bigger numbers in the summer, July, August, and September. But ultimately, it all comes down to how many properties are out there available for sale, because do people feel comfortable selling their houses? Do people want to have people coming through their houses during this pandemic, even though the numbers have improved and we are getting into phase 3 reopening again? Toronto has always suffered from a lack of inventory because the demand is just so incredibly strong for condos and houses here in the city and outside of the city. And with the pandemic, it has tightened the supply even more, to the point where people are willing to just overpay to just get whatever they can get. Because as you buyers out there who have been through this experience recently, at some point you just become a little bit less fussy, right? Then you just go for it and you're willing to pay a little bit more for it just to get the deal done, so you know where you're moving to next. So to be honest, in my opinion, I would expect a strong second half of the year, unless we do get a second wave or some other sort of, detrimental thing that's going to affect the market. But what we know is the real estate industry is incredibly resilient. Toronto demand for property is really, really strong, and it's not really going anywhere. That demand is pretty much almost always there. It just comes down to how much supply we have to meet that demand. And because of the tight demand and the lack of inventory, I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing people look for homes outside of the city, looking for sort of country properties, maybe cottage properties, or maybe just start considering areas that they never thought before. Maybe having a backyard and a basement or a garage or a park nearby has become really, really important. That remains to be seen, and we will have to wait for the data to come out on that. But I would expect that people who are forming households, getting married, having kids, who need to expand space and who can pretty much virtually work from anywhere these days, I don't fully expect that we're going to see a bigger shift into the suburbs, which was always the case here in Toronto anyways. It's going to be a little bit more forced to happen now because of the pandemic. Okay, so just to recap what we talked about here. So in April, we saw the numbers tank. In May, we saw some signs of life of the market coming back again. And we've been working pretty much throughout all of this, as not only are we considered essential, but the real estate market and realtors and brokerages have adapted to the situation very, very nicely. And then in the month of June, we saw the numbers get back to the same level. So it's going to be interesting to see what's going to happen in the next 6 months of the year. I expect demand to continue to be strong. Will we be able to reach or even come close to the levels of 2019? There's a chance for that. And so if you are looking to sell, you're thinking of selling, you definitely want to give us a call, because it's definitely great conditions in terms of getting a really great price for your property. People always ask me all the time, is it a good time now? How's the market? Is it a good time to sell? Is it a good time to buy? I'm going to say right now it's a good time to sell. Absolutely. Buying is going to be a little bit more challenging, but if you're working with the right strategy and the right people, I don't see it being too difficult to be able to get the property that you want. And obviously demand is a lot stronger now because of the lower interest rates and the economic environment, which has sort of served as a catalyst to become a little bit more aggressive in buying property, because all of a sudden financially it's been a lot more favorable. So if you're in a steady job and you can work pretty much anywhere, these are really, really good conditions for you. So if you guys are looking for leading edge knowledge and expertise in this business, and you want to work with somebody with integrity who you can trust, then you definitely want to give us a call here at Selling Toronto. We'd be happy to help you out. We'd be happy to give you the best advice so that you can buy and sell your property with confidence and with experience. And we can help you successfully sell safely and effectively. So I hope this video was helpful. Please be sure to throw down a like for me and click subscribe to the channel and share this with anybody that you think might benefit from it. But the Toronto real estate market is active, it's strong, we're pretty much back to normal, and you actually might want to get in before prices go up even further. Talk to you soon, guys, and bye for now.